Play this out. Let's go 3 and 4 levels deep here. If Israel strikes, Iran counterstrikes here. Obviously, Israel, if they get harmed and then really harmed, and not just a symbolic strike like the last 2 from Iran had been, but actually devastates their energy infrastructure and those specific targets that Iran talked about here, they obviously would then go full on in response then. Now then the U.S. gets drawn in because there's been so many that says Israel's too small. They can't stand up to all this barrage. We have to go in and fight with them. And let's say now we end up giving in to that. What do you think is going to happen next? Is Iran going to be defeated in the war? Are we going to invade Iran? Or are we going to keep using more missile strikes back and forth? What do you think is going to happen with that? Look at Yemen. Ask the Yemenis, who Saudi Arabia for a decade tried to bomb into the Stone Age. They never did. They're still fighting to this day. And I mean, you can nearly look at anyone else. Look at Hamas, for crying out loud. They're not even a state actor. They were hermetically sealed in the Gaza Strip, and they're still able to resist and still able to fight. Now, how much more so this massive country of Iran? If we start trying to bomb them and use missile strikes, it's not going to make them quit unless you go in on the ground and take control of their political centers and eliminate their leadership. Then they're going to continue to exist as a political entity. That's just the facts. It should be elementary. That's not hard to figure out. That's what it takes. So if you can't go to that 4th phase and forward and resource it, then do not go to phase 1. Don't take the first step. And let me just confirm to you, we can't, not shouldn't, we can't go to that 4th phase and beyond. We don't have the resources for it. We don't have the military capacity to do it. We dang sure don't have the political will in the United States to form and mobilize this huge army to go into Iran and to engage in what would certainly be a multi-year operation there. With then, even if you succeeded, would require occupying the place for some number of years after. There's no appetite for that in America at all. Any party, nobody is going to be signing on for that. But even more poignant, we don't have the ammunition for it. We don't have the missiles. We don't have the artillery shells. We don't have the personnel. And by the way, they are shooting back too. So they're going to start attacking our troops now, especially if it gets into all out war. All the stops are off. Nobody's going to withhold anything. Every target they can hit and every American they can kill, they'll do it. And now then, in the worst case scenario, when it gets into this full-on war, they have no more motivation to hold anything back. Strait of Hormuz is going to get shut down. The global economy is wrecked, because the price of oil will go through the roof because you have this massive amount of it being now shut off in an instant. Strategic reserves that we and some other places have are not going to come close to solving that problem. You don't have enough. You'll bleed that dry in no time at all. And some places don't have any. And every economic output that there is requires an uninterrupted flow of sufficient quantities at an affordable price of oil. And if that gets gashed, then everything else goes through the roof. And our economy is already weakened and it's kind of shaky. Now, we had some great numbers the past week that the current administration celebrating. And I'm telling you, if you want those numbers to continue, and if you want them to pave the way for the next 4 weeks or so until that election, do not get into a war here. If only you care about the election, that's what we ought to be focusing on, keeping this thing out of war. So no matter what you think it may do and make some of the Israeli supporters in America unhappy, not suggest to Benjamin Netanyahu, do not launch this attack against Iran. Don't do it. And I think that Biden should now publicly, apparently behind the scenes, negotiations are no longer working. Biden talked at length about all of his people that are talking to the Israeli people, obviously to no effect, and it's irrelevant. So now I think that he should publicly say, it is not in America's interest for this to escalate. We are going to now elevate diplomacy, and we're going to work with all of the regional partners, to include Israel, to include even Iran, and some of our other Arab partners in the region who are willing to work for peace. We're going to put a full court press on that. The war hasn't worked. Fighting hasn't worked. We're going to try something else. We do not support a war. We will not support one. That's what the president of the United States ought to be saying today.